Sounds
So
good.
let's hop in.
Sure.
So, because we talked the other day, I already know more about you than I did even over the past 5, 7 years.
Yeah.
And you filled me in more on your political background and that's part time, involved in municipal councillor work, and your realty experience. So I was really interested in your background in nonprofit work. That was really intriguing for me. And love that you balance this all with being a mom. So I start to get a bit more of an awareness about what your passions are. And soon, you who are watching are going to be able to get to know Nicole even better and find out some of the challenges that she's overcome. So, Nicole, why don't you fill us in and tell us anything else that you'd like to fill us in on about some of the maybe top 1 or 2 accomplishments that you're proud of over the last year to 3 years of your
Over the
life?
last year. Okay. That's a good question. I think in the short term, the last, like, let's say 2 to 3 years, I would say one of them was getting involved with municipal politics. Someone had mentioned to me, I guess about 2.5 years ago, you should put your name forward because it would be great to have some younger faces, some more women in local politics in the Comox Valley. And there's about 23 seats that sit in all our different communities and municipalities here. And so at that time, I kind of put my name forward and did a little bit of, I went with informational videos because I thought that was a good way for people to get to know you just kind of quickly.
Mm.
And that was done, I don't want to say on a whim, because that's not the right way to say it, but that worked out successfully, which was really exciting because on that avenue, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. And I've loved that part of my career. The last 2 years has been, I don't think there's really been one time where I thought, oh, I shouldn't have taken on that part-time job, as the type of people and communities, and like, I love the business side of things. So getting to meet businesses in the town you live in and walking everywhere, it's really connected me to the community. So, and
Mm-hmm.
I've lived in Cumberland and Comox. So it was a really cool way to get, I would say, integrated into the community I live in. So I'm proud of that accomplishment in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I bet.
And then, yeah, it was, I don't think of it as a proud moment, but it was the easiest one to come up with. So, and then the other one would probably just be, I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old, but something that I was very career oriented before I had children. And so for better or worse, there's some heart challenges to it, but I've been able to maintain the level of business in my real estate business while having children. So obviously there's pros and cons to that for sure. And a lot of my husband has stepped in quite a bit to support in a dad and sometimes primary parent role quite a bit. But I
Fabulous.
think it's had its negatives, but it's definitely an accomplishment that I just wanted to keep my career, and I guess I made that a partial priority as well as my family. So those
Mm-hmm.
two things together in the last 3 years, and then COVID is like a whole new thing. So
Yeah,
I
a
would
whole new
probably add that
chapter.
as the third one. I remember thinking, oh, I didn't know if I could do the 2 jobs. And now we do the 2 jobs with between 1, 2, or 3 kids at home, and my husband's working. So
Yeah, that
it seems
is
like every
really,
time it's like a level, I call it level up. It's
yeah, yeah, for
you
sure.
hit a level and
Definitely.
then you get to get a level up.
Yeah. I always think of it at like flights of stairs, levels
Yeah.
of success. Sometimes we
Yeah.
take them step by step, usually we do, and sometimes we're leveled up a whole flight
Yeah.
in our capacity and opportunities that are given to us or that we create for ourselves. So yeah, I can really relate to the whole family and business management, and you deserve a ton of kudos because I know firsthand that it's not an easy thing, but it's such a fulfilling responsibility, both. So, what I'm curious today is we're going to get into, I want to ask you some questions about challenges you've overcome and ask you about some habits that contributed to your success in the past, and probably habits that contributed to your problems that you've experienced or unhappiness. Before we get there, I'm really wanting to know more about what is most important to you to focus on today. And I got a little bit of background on a call that we had before this coaching call. But would you share with other people what your aspirations are moving forward if, like, time didn't stand in your way, money didn't stand in your way? What's your bigger dream that I can support you with today?
Yeah, for sure. So the bigger dream down the road, and hope I was thinking it was coming very quickly, and now I'm gauging what the timeline on that is. But I've always wanted to have like a pro bono nonprofit charity, depending on what word I use, aspect of my business, because my heart keeps trying to put me back into that business and, you know, move from real estate and go back into that and really work with people. But my business sense says, well, you're good at I think I'm good at real estate. And so it would be very cool to be able to do pro bono. I've talked to quite a few different people about it, and there's always these red flags, of course, because when you have a good idea and it's trying to help somebody, there's often a government or there's something that kind of stops it. So that part has never gone away. And when I first started real estate just under 5 years ago, my intent was to go in with just working with people that were kind of 6 months away from buying, or kind of walk them through the credit side, because I used to do a little bit of the credit counseling and things like that. So my goal has always been to not just be in business or sales, but have some aspects, because I always felt just a little bit different working in nonprofit management. There's just a different side where you get these warm and fuzzy stories, and we get them in real estate, but it's just not quite the same. And so every year I say next year will be, and it's always on my goals list to add that pro bono in. And I get caught up, or I guess the issue is I'm a little bit busy to actually work through the red tape. So this year was the year that I was going to for sure figure it out. And I just don't know if that's realistic, but that's one part of it. And then the other part is, I've been taking my licensing to be a manager or own a brokerage or one day, or just basically a different type of this next step after being a realtor would be to be a realtor manager. And so the exciting part about doing that, there's actually many different parts that would work for me, but is I can work that into my business maybe easier if I have some sort of management role based on what that provides. And one day I'm hoping to do my master's, and it also helps that. So taking that education during COVID was a bit of a hard decision to make, but it fit that pro bono aspect of the business that I don't want to say I want to, I will one day figure out how to do that. And so, yeah, it's going from being a salesperson more to being a business owner of some kind. And definitely the community pro bono part is very important, because if I don't figure that out, I think I would then go back into that line of work.
Yeah, so it's giving me a bit more awareness of what's important to you. I got a candle going here, so forgot. Cool. I'm gonna put it out. Yeah, I'm learning more about your values and your priorities when I'm listening to you speak. And what's coming up for me is your connection with people and your passion or desire to help people transform their situation in life and be a part of that. Sounds like it's like the juicy side of business for you.
Self-fulfilling, and sometimes I say it's the greedy part, but yeah.
Okay.
I shouldn't say greedy. There was a word used yesterday that I heard that was kind of in a negative way, like it makes you feel better. But anyway, I think it's a positive thing as well. But
okay, so
makes me feel good, which is why when you used to volunteer and people would say, well, that's great, or other people as well, it's like, well, people say, well, it makes me feel good, which is why I do it too, right? So
right, yeah,
a part of the business.
Can you tell me what you mean? The pro bono work made you feel greedy, or? Oh.
No, I guess it's that you want other people to see you in a positive light, which is one aspect of why people try to do things that are helpful for other people.
Right.
And it's not a greedy thing. I should say that's definitely the wrong word, but like there's something about it that's self-fulfilling, which is why you do it as well.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So with the whole dream of managing, being a broker, including this pro bono aspect or not-for-profit in the business model, how you serve people. I'm curious, when you were working with nonprofit organizations in the past, what were some of the habits that helped you create success in that area? And by the way, I can hear the kids, but they're not distracting. Hopefully they're not distracting to you. And and if they need you, such is life. If one of mine pops in here, I'm working from home as well. It's okay.
Yeah, they're very well. They're very respectful.
Okay, so yeah,
they know me.
Tell me a little bit more about where you're at in regards to reality right now and what you want the dream to look like. I want to hear more about, like, when you were, I'm going to back up here. When you were working in pro bono, what were some of the habits that created success for you and for others? And when I say that, I'm relating to that 20/80 law, where 20% of your habits are what actually produce the success or the problems that you experience. So what do you think some of the habits, those 20% of the habits were that helped you create success in the pro bono world?
I think it's probably a couple different things, and it's very similar in the political world. I'm very list driven and prioritizing. So I'll look at, every day I find the list of things to do is like over 20, and it's like, well, that's not realistic. So I try to pick like the 2 or 3, I call them big rocks, because at some point I saw something that said that, but it's like, if I get that done, that's what's going to make me feel a lot less stressed, because if I find I used to probably try to avoid that big thing. And so like in nonprofit, you'd be making phone calls to ask for certain funding or to get a grant application, which was the longer thing to do. And so I think it's almost being kind to yourself is making sure you really know what makes the biggest bang for your buck. And I think I do that still in life. So I try to keep that going. But just in general, I think trying to be good with people. And I used to love events and public speaking and just bringing people together. Just the people side of things and actually genuinely wanting that versus just, I don't know if I've ever had a job that I purely was there just trying to make that paycheck. You have to be there because there's something that you're really liking. So I'm not someone, I don't think, that could do a job they didn't like for too long. So wanting to be there and getting the big rocks done are probably the 2 big things.
Yeah, the wanting to be there piece, are you referring to like being pretty clear on your why and your purpose behind the action?
Yeah, I think so. Just my jobs, I would like to have them purpose based, or whenever I think, okay, well, if I don't do this type of career path, and I'm going to do something different, because some people have said I've had way too many careers, but I did banking for 10 years, real estate for 5, and nonprofit was kind of a mixture of about 5 or 6 years. So I do like a change, but I also, if I'm happy, I'll stay somewhere for a long time. So my goal is to create a business that I would stay at for 20 years.
Yeah, and maybe in that 20-year period, things would change every 3 or 4 years. And you have to ask yourself, are those some people's opinions really that important to me?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's why I like self-employment. Allows you can change your business if you want relatively.
Yeah,
it's almost like a new job. So self-employment probably was always the right path anyway.
Okay, so prioritizing, Nicole, has really helped. Figuring out what the big rocks are and being kind to yourself, having those realistic expectations of yourself instead of putting too much pressure on yourself. So that was a big habit that produced success. And then being clear about your purpose behind actions. And what did you mean when you were saying, when you were referring to one of your habits that brought about success, and you said bringing people together?
I don't know how exactly to describe that, but it's just something about, there's something that if people are happy or joyful. So, if you're having when I do events, I get very stressed because I just want everything to be really, really fun and joyful for people. So there's just something about, if I ever have a day that I'm not having a good day or something, my immediate reaction is like, if I just go do something that might make someone else feel bad, like that's how I then think, okay, I've neutralized how I feel.
Right.
So,
So
but
like,
so something I don't do, I don't always watch out for self-care. So that's something that I need to sometimes watch out for, but
okay.
I get my joy from other people often.
Okay. So that might be a good time for us to talk about some of the habits, the 20% of your habits that have caused you problems,
Mm-hmm.
or unhappiness, however you want to put it.
Sure.
What would some of those be?
Okay, so habits that detract from happiness.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Probably like the biggest one or two things would probably be like the inner voice that's not as healthy as it could be. So your kind of your voice that's talking to you all day long.
Yeah.
I would say that's one of my biggest challenges, and that's one thing I've decided that I don't want to pursue that big goal until I at least do a little bit of work on that, because I could reach success or get sometimes feel like I've accomplished something. But if the inner voice, I know for sure that my inner voice is definitely not anywhere, it could be a lot healthier. And so that comes from just anxiety based, I don't know, my anxiety has come and gone over the last 20 years. So, um, and I feel like I had it when I was younger and it went away. And then, as I mentioned to you, it's been about the last 18 months. It's just been there. And I don't want to pretend it's not there, but I always think, oh, maybe it'll be gone this week. And there's something, um, there's something that keeps it there. And yet I'm quite happy with, obviously I'm very happy with my family and I love my two jobs, but there's something that's keeping that anxiety there. And I
Yeah.
do notice the inner voice is quite bad. And then the other thing is probably I don't take care of like my nutrition. So my eating habits and my sleeping habits and things like that. So I'm kind of like, I do what I want. Whatever I want to do, I'm going to do. So if I want to stay up really late and eat really crappy, I'm going to do that without realizing that that's not helping. So I'm not the same in a business sense as I am to like self-care.
So that's interesting because it sounds like in the coaching world, sometimes we use this word called word called like your shadow side. It's like the weak side of you, or
Yeah, totally.
or the dark side of your strength. And the strength that I see associated with this lack of not choosing good nutrition, not choosing good sleep habits, could quite likely be that you are like deeply determined, a deeply determined woman, and so incredibly strong in your focus. So that's what I see about you on the other side of that, is like, you can't tell me what to do.
Well, yeah, definitely that. I was like, I don't know about deeply determined. I don't know, but I always say I'm one of the.
If you're stuck and you're focused on
Yeah,
what you want, then I would.
and I
I would
think
call
about it
that
a lot. Yeah.
determined. Mhm.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Okay.
do want what I want. I have a hard time sometimes. I have to remember that I have to really, as much as I love everybody else's joy, I don't always take everyone else's opinions into play.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Um, so just give me 1 second here.
sure. I liked the shadow side, dark side terminology. It's good.
Like two sides of a coin, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get back to your dream um, and talk about when you were telling me you get to this point where you're like, yeah, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to start working on this big dream. I'm going to put my ducks in a row and I'm going to get organized and I'm going to do it. And then something holds you back. And I want to hear more about that point, because I believe there's some gold and some insight for you there for us to uncover.
Yeah, I feel like this is a bit of a new thing because I don't know that I've really hesitated on doing something before. I normally will, I mean, health wise, I definitely have, you push that off, but that's a little bit different. I think that's more common. This time it's just something like it's a bit bigger of it's a bit of a bigger thing, and I think I've had quite a few people be like, that won't work, that's a bad, that's not a good idea, and I'm very stubborn. I'm like, it's actually, I just need to work out the details, it'll be a great idea.
Yeah.
But I think I'm trying to be I mean, there's lots of time. I'm 36. I don't feel this pressure that this needs to be done this year. And I think ignoring mental health or ignoring your body telling you something is kind of if the timing isn't right because of how you're feeling, I think that this is the first time I'm just saying that's probably not right.
And you're paying more attention to your body and your mind.
Yeah.
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 That's
I don't want to cause myself more challenge or more, if you go into something, it's, to me, my mindset is not quite right. So if I go into something that's the right thing for me, but my mindset isn't right, you might kill that idea. So it's kind of that determined part. I really want it to work. So if my mindset's not right, then I don't want to do it.
Okay. So that's why I asked you. I was going to say, stay with me here, because sometimes a detour feels like we're moving away from what you'd like to talk about. But I heard you talking, using some language around your mindset being your top priority, what you want to focus in on first, because you know that when you get that and when you transform those neural pathways, you're going to be able to do anything. It transforms your habits, it transforms your behavior, all your relationships, right?
Yeah.
So when you think about a habit cycle in the mind, there's always some trigger, and you experience a thought which leads you to feeling an emotion, then you react, and your behavior is either responsive or reactive. It's either something that helps you or it hinders you.
Is reactive hindering every time?
No, reactive isn't hindering every time, but you have to ask yourself if it's something that, if it's something that's healthy, or if it's something that is empowering. Oh, I just lost my, there we go. So that's when I'm asking you about your future and moving forward with that dream. It brings us back to looking at what you might be tolerating in your thought life, that negativity or that critical aspect that would help you in all areas of your life, your physical health, your relationships, your work life, those relationships. So can you tell me more about what type of thoughts seem to be reoccurring that that you tolerate? And they're the ones that are like, they make you feel crummy. If you think about how much they bother you or how much they reoccur, they would probably be like a 7, 8, 9, or 10 on the scale of irritation or total frustration.
Yep.
Do any come to mind?
It's probably, because we're talking about business side of things. On the business side of things, it's probably like me telling myself, well, you've only been able to maintain your business over the last couple of years, so why do you think that you should then try to start a business or try to change the business? Or it's often saying like, you haven't been able to, and it's about like me as a, let's say in my example, a salesperson, or I haven't been able to accomplish something. And yet if I wrote it down on paper or it was someone else telling me that, I'd say, well, your situation, or like how would you have been able to do that with, also you're not going to neglect, my family is equally as important. And it was those 5 years of obviously where you want to be, there. So so then I started telling myself, though, then why would you do the business like right now? But so it's often as soon as I'm kind of working out numbers and have some interesting opportunities, or I want to start doing more, I have a business case for the pro bono side and I want to go back to it and just refresh it. My brain to almost give that like easy way out is like, well, either, I guess it's more like people will wonder why you're doing that, because it's not like you've grown and you're a you know, you're in the middle of the pack, you're not a top person, why would you do that? And so that one thought normally stops me. And then I think it's also just on the anxiety and personal side of things. It seems like I think people rely on me probably more than they do. Like, I think I've disappointed people, or I think they're probably waiting for me to call or email them. And so I'll work that extra, like I'll stay up late or I'll get up really early. Like I put more pressure on myself. I'm assuming more than I probably need to. Like I'm not, and then I try to tell myself, you're not that important. Like people aren't waiting for you, or, you know, but yeah.
Can I pause you there?
Yeah, for
You're,
sure.
I think we talked about this earlier. You're very self-aware. So I knew you would be able to snatch some of those thoughts that spend a lot of time up there in your brain pretty quickly. And some of the biggest ones that I heard were, and this is me reading into things, so you tell me if I read the wrong book, that my family life could go downhill, my marriage could go downhill, and I could feel completely disconnected with my family if I take this on right now. Like, it's just probably not possible for me to balance both, or to have happiness in both aspects of my life.
I guess that's possible, but one of my motivators for being like going from self-employed to even farther up and not removing myself a little bit from a sales position and being a little bit more, and I don't know if I don't like calling myself a leader, it's just a self-conscious thing, I guess, but moving in from a sales to a leadership role, or the transitioning, is for the full purpose that would benefit myself and my family. So that's a big motivator to do that. Is I really think I could set my hours, my cell phone would not be as available. Like so part of it, I don't think that's necessarily, it probably drives down to more, and I don't even care if I fail. Like, I think, well, I'd have a lot of, me and my girlfriend were talking about the other day, like I'd have a lot of fun failing, because like the wall, you know, everything would be the way that I want it to be, which is how I like things. But it's very much, I very much care. So outside of the inner voice kind of challenge, I care a lot about what other people think. And I think that's probably somewhat normal, but at some point you think, I don't want to I don't want to care that much, you know. And I've heard, as you go into 40s and then 50s, like it changes just naturally. You learn to care more about yourself and your people that you care about the most.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some can'ts that you're tolerating, maybe subconsciously. Like, for example, I can't be happy unless I have permission or approval from others, unless they think my idea is a good idea, if they think my decision, I'm worthy of acting on this business idea or this business goal.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, let's go down a little deeper into this rabbit hole, because there's going to be some different beliefs that are important for you to create in order for you to increase the amount of freedom that you're experiencing. Instead of waiting until you're in a quote leadership role to experience that freedom, you need to be in charge of creating that freedom for yourself right now, so that more freedom becomes possible. But
I liked that word, because I when you said freedom, my instinct was like, I don't feel very free or freedom at all. So, and I'm sure I could, because I don't have any things I have to be doing. I do. Yeah. So
yeah,
that was an interesting, I thought, like my life does not feel free, or freedom is
okay.
doesn't attach with it.
Yeah. So a lot of the time that we don't feel free, it's because we've given our power away to other people, whether they know it or not. It can even be to your partner, your spouse, your husband, your wife. It can be to colleagues or your boss. It can be to clients. And the reason that we do that is because we feel like if we don't give our power away, that we'll lose something.
Mhm.
And usually it's that we'll lose face, like we'll lose credibility in the public's eye, or some people will stop liking us, or they'll leave us altogether and we'll lose that relationship. Sometimes we're afraid simply because, well, it's not very simple in our mind, but simply because we're telling ourselves a big fat story about this horrible future ahead of us. And we are very afraid of getting out of our comfort zone because we've made up this big story in our heads that's way worse than reality.
Yeah, I think
So,
that happens a lot. The
yeah,
big fat story.
yeah, a big, fat, stupid story. And we all do it. And we all
Mhm.
have to become aware of what story we're telling ourselves to break the pattern. And then act in new ways, create new habits and behaviors. So, what if you started believing that, hey, maybe I could make more decisions to take care of my own needs and be happy, allow myself to be happy without losing this thing that I'm afraid of, or without experiencing whatever it is that I'm afraid of and think will happen. I want to hear more about what you're afraid of. What's your biggest fear that you don't really want to tell me about?
um, I guess probably I'm just you know,
Yeah,
questions come up and it's the first thing that comes to my mind.
sure.
Um, I've had success in career since I was younger. And I was going to mention, you know, in your 20s, it's that imposter syndrome because you're doing something and you're doing it pretty well, but you don't feel like you should be there. And so I don't have that anymore. But what I'm afraid to lose is I don't know how to describe this without sounding, but I'm not very domestic. So to me, I've always, it sounds terrible, but if I'm not this, I don't know, if I'm not making like 6 digits and I'm not a successful career person, like
Mm,
I actually don't know, and this, I don't want to say those words, but like, I don't know what my value is if it's not like bringing
financially.
in, it's very financial tied because I used to joke about it. It's like, well, as long as I make money, I can feed myself. And, you know, like all of those things apply. And so, um, yeah, I mean, I guess not having a career, like sometimes I think, what if you just went and worked, not just, what if I worked, you know, part-time with an organization I loved? And obviously sometimes that's a different financial picture. I could maybe do that, but there's just some value tied to, I don't know. I feel like I fight with my self-worth a little bit anyhow. And yet I really, I cling to probably that a little bit. And so when I do have like a very small, um, you know, when you're working with different people, maybe 10 people at a time, there's always that you'll have a little bit of a conflict come up, especially, you know, real estate can be stressful. And I guess it's like immediately I just see that I could be losing that, or so I'm either going to lose my success, or I'm not going to now be able to reach this goal of being self-employed and kind of still being successful, but in a different way. So I'm either going to lose that goal because one person maybe is going to, you know, really be that dissatisfied, which I've probably thought that like 50 times and that's never happened. So I at some point need to like turn that off and say, even if that does happen, because it happens, right? It happens with everybody.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's really tied to like, I don't know what my worth is except to provide some financial into a household, whether it was just myself in my 20s or into a family. And so I feel like I'll put work, unfortunately, ahead of a lot of, I always now have to check myself and say, you know, family is different, especially this year. And you can't always put work first. It's just not
Mhm.
possible. But.
Um, it sounds like another belief that's tied to this one is that um, if I take care of myself, I'm not being successful. I'm not a successful person if I'm taking care of myself because then I can't take care of business. I'm not, like, I know that that's really cutting to the chase and dumbing it down, simplifying it. But that, I hear that a lot when I'm coaching my private clients, that if they're really honest with me, they're afraid of being still because they feel it's unproductive. They're afraid of taking time that is just for them, or just for them and their girlfriends, or just for them and their family, because they start going frantic inside and feel like they're going to drop all the balls that they have in the air. And yet, I don't know if you've ever heard this analogy, but when we do have many balls in the air and we're afraid of dropping one or two or three of them, there's one of them that is more elastic, and that's typically career. But family is like glass, and your health is like glass.
Yeah.
Your mental health, physical health, everything. And when you drop it, it doesn't usually bounce back.
I like that.
Yeah.
But work does.
Yeah, but work does. And typically, so does money. Work, money, career, relationships. And so I think it would be really valuable if we spent some time developing out more of a well-rounded picture of what makes you valuable, and also scenarios that could show up in your life that don't take away from your value, but in your mind right now you've been thinking that they do, like the one you just brought up around people being dissatisfied with you. Well, if people are dissatisfied with me, then I know I'm not of as much value. If people are don't like me or aren't pleased with me, then my worth has dropped. I'm like a marionette, and on Tuesday I'm not.
The next day it's great.
Yeah. And so it gets back to that control that you give over to people. So they can't take it from you unless you give it.
Correct.
So let's look at your value, and some of the things that are coming to my mind that are so basic and so powerful is that when I'm healthy, I am more valuable. When I am at peace, I am more valuable. When I'm happy, I'm more valuable, or valuable, period. But if you're not healthy, then you cannot be of service the way you love to be in your community. And you can't help individuals and families change their lives and make these big shifts that you love to help them make unless you yourself are thinking differently about what valuable is, where I get my worth.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I've been talking for a while here, and I want to hear your perspective on what you would add to that list instead of going, okay, I'm only a success when blank and blank happens. But if my income drops, I better watch out. I got to scramble. I got to be available 24/7. What's a healthier way of looking at different places where you could get your needs for worth and value met?
Definitely in the mom role, obviously, because I love that. That quality time you spend is they're happy with you 100% of the time. So it's always easy. And I need to adjust when that'd be negative, but I'm always like, well, you're not a good mom because you're not a good teacher. But that's a new thing. But yeah, because I'm so people oriented, just the relationships I have with my husband and my, parents and friends, I just, even in those relationships, I always think like you could be doing better, or like, I wonder if they wish you were, I still question that too. But I think that if I fixed that, there's so many different places and people that I would feel value for. So
You would feel value for, or you would see
their
yourself
value.
as valuable in that role.
Yeah. And it's something I need to work on, but yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like you're tapping into other aspects of where your value comes from. I'm a great mom, and it would be helpful, Nicole, to ask yourself later on, give yourself 5, 10, 15 minutes to redefine what is a good mom, right? Because if you have unrealistic expectations sometimes of yourself in your work life, like the list that has 20 things on it, instead of breaking it down to those 3 big rocks, then, and it stems from this belief that I need to make this much in order to feel valuable. And I want to let you know, I can totally relate. And I didn't understand what was going on when my income dropped several years ago. And I just started freaking out. And then realized, wow, you better give your head a shake if you think that that's the only place you get your value.
Totally. Yeah. It's a weird, and you don't feel like something should be like you shouldn't, that wouldn't be in my personality, or it's, it's like one of those things, but once I know something, I'm okay to admit it. Like,
yeah,
I love getting gifts, and I'm always like, that's a really weird thing, but it doesn't change what the truth is. So I've always been like, I really value that I can make a good salary. So you can't change that, right? Once you've acknowledged it doesn't change.
And it's okay to link your feelings for yourself and your worth with your business success as part of your vision of your own value. But if, like we've been talking about, it's your primary thing to look at, your primary gauge, your North Star, then it will take you away from being present with your kids, because you won't be feeling like that's...
It does a lot.
Yeah. So we've talked about your value being met as a mom, as a partner, as a good friend. I'm valuable when I show up like this. And then when you get comfortable in seeing yourself as valuable because you are who you are as a woman, as a friend, and as a person in those roles, then you can start getting comfortable seeing value in yourself when no one else is around and you're not working.
Right.
That's later on you can distill to that point.
Yeah.
So because you've had this old belief and it's driven some behaviors you don't like, not taking care of nutrition, sleep, the negative mindset sometimes, I'd love to help you. I'd love to help you look at some practical steps you can take moving forward to help you shift the mindset piece and help you see better results and be able to have the energy that you want, the freedom that you want. So as we've been talking, and I've been taking copious notes, which is why I'm looking. Me too. What comes to mind when you think about what you'll need to start thinking in order to move forward and create more of that optimistic, powerful mindset that you'll need moving forward in order to achieve those dreams?
I was just trying to think. I don't know if that's something I just need to internally, as you said, like rewire, or if being more communicative with the people that I value relationships with, and just, if you always assume people are irritated with you or think that you're not being present with them. And I'm very guilty for that. Like, I don't know how present I am with my friends and family. I've tried to make a bit of an effort at it, but I could probably do better. But so I don't know if it's something I need to, it could be internal and external, or it could be both, but I was just thinking about when I made that stupid comment, no stupid, but the comment about I like gifts. I thought maybe I thought like that might tie to like if someone gives me a gift, it means that they thought of me or value me. So I thought it was interesting how those two things, like it, I don't know, for some reason that, because you don't really, maybe with partners, husband, you do, but you don't really share. I'm a very emotional person, but I'm not a big feeling person. And a lot of people aren't. So I don't know if it's something I rewire and just say, I can be better when other people are around and more present, and that should help our relationships. And I don't need to talk to them kind of about this thing. Like, you know, let's say I wrote down, I really liked like freedom and feeling value, like as two examples of things that I could work on instead of inner voice, because those things are probably driving those things. So I don't know. I don't know if it's an internal thing or if it's just chat with people about this is what my thoughts are, and
It's both.
have people tell me they love me. I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
But, you know, yeah, it's probably both is what I'm
it's
thinking.
both, and there's more action steps that come afterwards, of course. But the internal rewiring is really important, and then your brain believes what you take action on as well, because faith without action is dead. And when I talk about faith, I mean what you truly believe in. So it's a belief that becomes a commitment inside. And what scientifically is happening physiologically is old neural pathways literally will die. Oh, did I cut out there?
Just for a second. Yeah.
Okay. Old neural pathways literally will die when you intentionally stop thinking that way and start thinking a new, healthier thought. And the only way you can start doing that is starting to notice when you get triggered. And and if you can notice when you get triggered, then you'll be able to pinpoint the thought that needs to shift. So usually a trigger is whenever someone says this kind of comment, or whenever my children act this way, or whenever my income drops below X, you know. So when you notice the triggers, that will move the habit cycle forward, and you'll start to think an anxious thought or a fearful thought.
Mm-hmm.
That's your opportunity to catch it and start the rewiring process. So a couple of the thoughts that you could plant, and if you look at brain imaging scans, you'll see that different parts of the brain can literally light up in larger quantities, a larger space, when you rewire your brain. So fascinating, because it shows you how much control you have over that mental real estate, right?
Yeah.
So once you've caught the thought and you notice how you start feeling and acting, then you can become more self-aware. Okay, here's my opportune moment. And so back to the feelings or the thoughts that you had suggested, maybe those are tied to the negative mental state that I want to shift. And I think you're bang on. So one of the thoughts that you brought up was, I'm valuable when. Mm-hmm. I'm also valuable when I blank. And there was one other one that you just brought up. Oh yeah. Instead of believing a fearful thought like, oh, so-and-so is not feeling connected with me, I'm not being a good mom, if they're unhappy with me, I can tell, like talking about a client.
Yeah.
Your next step, like you said, is the communication piece. Instead of assuming, you want to get curious. Okay. And when you're in that curious state, you're like a little kid. They're not worried. They just are really honestly wanting to know what's going on. And when you come from that place, also people are much less defensive because you aren't assuming already how they're feeling without asking. One of the things you can do with friends and family and spouses is ask them, when do you feel most connected to me?
That's a good question.
Yeah, because it might be very different than what you're expecting of yourself. Like, I need to spend an hour with each child in order for them to feel loved.
Individually.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And I think it would also be really helpful moving forward on top of that mindset piece and more open communication, looking at, so because we don't have as much time as I'd like to be able to delve deeper into this communication piece,
Yeah.
I'll just touch briefly on it, but there's probably limiting beliefs you have around communication, or you'd be doing that more too.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we think, oh, it's rude of me to address that, so I definitely won't, because I don't want to offend.
I'm a very like I communicate a lot. Like I'm an over communicator as far as the quantity, but it's never like, how are you feeling? Or did I read this properly?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a
And
gap in my communication that I think is quite strong. It's a gap as far as
right.
if I don't want to come across as rude. And I think it's easy in emails and text to do that accidentally. So
Okay.
get better at calling people, I guess, and asking.
Okay. The truth behind that is that the more clear you are with people in business
Mm-hmm.
and personally,
Mm-hmm.
the deeper the connection you'll build with them,
True.
and the more sales that you'll make, and the more love that you'll get to experience. It's fabulous. And sometimes it's opposite of what we think will happen. Other people love clarity too, and often they might be anxious to bring the topic up, and they're so refreshed by you bringing it up.
True.
Mm-hmm. Because then you become someone who can help them find solutions to their problems. And you're also,
And be honest, which is good.
yeah,
Open
and
and
you're
honest.
also showing up as a leader for them, and in business they want you to lead them.
Yeah.
In all ways. Relationships is a
Agree.
big part of your business. Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
So reminding yourself that clear communication is kind is a really helpful one. It's unkind to not address things that you feel maybe are bubbling under the surface, because other people will feel them as well.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
People pick up your
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah. So what's the best case scenario moving forward that you would love to create when it comes to your own personal health, the eating side and the sleeping side?
I don't know if it would be like, I probably have like an 80-20 unhealthy to healthy rule, and maybe just to invert that. And like, I don't ever want to be super strict and whatnot. But when we were talking about like not having time for exercise because I feel like I wouldn't be successful, I've done enough little bouts of like personal training or learn to jogs that I personally think if you're healthy, you would be more successful. So I try to use that to motivate myself, because I must not be super unhealthy, but there's room for improvement. So I need to just make sure that that's scheduled in and happening and making it a priority. And I'm really bad for moving around my schedule primarily for work, but I think sometimes you just have to have those personal blocks that are non-negotiable, I guess you'd say. But I do believe that like you're a healthy person is going to do significantly better in general with everything, relationships, all that stuff.
So I love this because it's starting to shed light on, okay, someone who sees their value would make themselves a commitment to themselves non-negotiable. They would make that calendar appointment non-negotiable. It would be one of those big rocks in your day.
Yeah. And I'd probably pace, if it's always a timing or scheduling, or I always say like, with the current situation, it's easy to give that as an excuse. It's like, well, kids are around more, which is great, or, but if you really want to make something a priority, there's lots of ways to actually do it. So,
yeah.
But I'm worth it is a hard one, making yourself worth it for sure.
So sometimes the brain doesn't like to hear I'm worth it when you've been believing the opposite for so long. It's just too big of a switch. But I could be worth it.
Oh.
Is something the brain can accept more easily and start to switch.
Or will be, I don't know. All right.
Uh,
No.
well, you are already. I could start believing that I'm worth it.
Yes.
And that's okay, I'm getting there, right? Not there yet,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm open to that.
The word could for me was like, well, you could, but you won't. So that's why I was like,
Oh,
could.
maybe.
I didn't like could
Okay.
for my brain. I was like, oh, but no.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, maybe it
It's
works
my
better.
negative brain.
I'm open to start believing.
Or I'm working towards. You said one that I really liked, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the practical steps that you've mentioned putting into action is scheduling that into your calendar.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to recommend, because you've been bringing up the critical piece, self-critical aspect a fair amount, it's been a bit of a theme today, is
Mm-hmm.
when we're critical, we can think in all or nothing terms, like, oh, you screwed up, or that didn't work out, did it? Well,
Totally.
then now I'm going to punish you, because you have to feel the pain.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all or nothing. I'm just not going to do it, and it rarely works out to your favor when you're acting with that prerogative. So what I would recommend is something that I heard recently and absolutely love, which is all or something.
Yeah.
Instead of all or nothing. And it applies to any area of life that you're working on, physical health, what you eat, and it helps you develop more kindness and compassion and gentleness towards yourself. So we've talked about some different mindsets to start rewiring. We've talked about the habit cycle. We've talked about some more practical steps to help you move forward. What could you sum up the important points or the important insights that you're taking away that are meaningful for you?
Yeah. Some of the things that I liked that you said was the balls in the air. I really liked that one where you said like your everything but your work is basically glass. I think it just doesn't rebound as quickly. I thought I haven't heard that analogy before, and that really stuck with me as far as something. And then for whatever reason, the freedom and value words really stuck out to me, that those aren't something I'm associating with my life, and there's no reason that I shouldn't be. I know that I should be associating those things, especially where I'm at today. I think there's accomplishments, therefore that should feel, if I feel accomplished, I should feel value, and I feel accomplished, but I don't feel value. So there's something going on there. I liked the asking people, when do you feel most connected to me? I think that's a really good way. I probably am not doing that as well as I could be. So I think that's good, as I'm sure most people don't ask that question. And I think that was kind of mostly it, except for I think by making health and relationships more of a priority, or balancing that out with this big work kind of thing that I hold on to, is hopefully that could change what the inner voice, what's happening with those other things potentially. So I don't think you just necessarily go 100% in trying to changing your pathways. I think it's important to try to, what I'm putting in my body and what I'm sleeping and what I'm exercising is probably going to change a little bit of how I'm talking to myself. So
Definitely.
it does when I do it for short periods of time. So I know that it's.
Yeah. I know you have to go, so we'll wrap up, but I want to leave you with a book as well called Atomic Habits. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
It's by James Clear, and he talks about how every action we take towards creating a new identity for ourselves is like a vote towards our perspective of ourselves. So Nicole, every action, and I would encourage you to take really tiny steps forward instead of unrealistic ones that are frustrating because you can't meet them. Every action will help you feel more confident in that area, and then buoy your confidence in the other areas too. It's just ricochet boomerang effect.
Yeah. I heard that quote and I liked it. It was like just a little, like that little drop of a vote, is what you're hoping for next. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Every action counts.
Yeah.
So tell me, what are you gonna do to take action and move the needle closer to the dream?
I think I first need to absorb some of the information and make sure I capture what really did stick out to me, because there's 4 or 5 things that did. But I like what you said about tiny steps. I think that's really important. And, you know, I need to, I don't know, I just need to, I'm still moving kind of forward on those other goals, even though I said it's not the right mental space, because my natural reaction is still to do that. So I guess I just need to have a really honest conversation with myself and try to, I don't know. But it's kind
Okay.
of one of those pivotal fork times, and I
Yeah.
probably need to, yeah.
Okay.
I
So
haven't stopped chasing that dream, even though my brain says you're not. Maybe I can do them at the same time, which wouldn't surprise me either. But
right. Yeah. Every time you work on a new thought, you'll be able to take new action.
yeah.
New empowered action. Okay. Well, awesome. We can continue.
Thank you for your
Conversation at
time.
another time.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And
Sounds great.
really loved hearing your insights and spending time with you.
Me too, Amy. Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
Okay, bye. Enjoy
Bye.
the sun this weekend.
Yes, I will. You too.
I will.